Greetings and welcome. My name is Jake Rayson. I am a forest gardener and a forest garden designer, and today's live stream is the third and final part of the Realtime Forest Garden Course. This, like everything I do, is an experiment, and the idea is to run a course in the evenings, so it makes it more accessible to a wider range of people, and to get people who are interested in starting a forest garden, to get them on board, and just to kind of get the ball rolling for them and point them in the right direction. It'll be a paid-for course. It won't be a vast amount of money. There will be, and the places will be limited. I think I'll limit it to six people in the Zoom seminar. So I will probably live stream these parts, and then I will be doing the Zoom seminar, 40-minute Zoom seminar afterwards, and that will be limited to 6 people, and that's what kind of people will be paying for. So yeah, everyone gets the benefit from it. Anyway, let's get cracking. The notes, this talk is online at forestgarden.wales/talks/realtime/cultivate, and if you press P, you will be able to see the notes. Not sure how many notes there are, but some of them might be a bit interesting. And this is really about this particular part is about cultivation. Yep. So I'll just try to make to break it down a bit into three separate parts, 3 different stages for creating a forest garden. So the first stage is the planning, the observation, and the design stage. The second part is building the structures. So you put in your windbreaks, and you put in your you get your perennial vegetable beds ready. You actually put in your physical structures, your polytunnels and your ponds and your cold frames and whatever it is, and then you plant your canopy trees. And then the third stage is the cultivation of this. Is to cultivate the areas. Is to cultivate the forest garden area by area. And this is a bit that I want to get onto. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Okay, yeah. So, yeah. Oh, good. We're there. So the course then is the today really is about preparing the ground. So you can imagine you've done your observations, you've got you made your survey, you've surveyed the land, you've seen what's growing there, you see where all the utilities are. You've done your design, so you know where things are kind of going to be going, where the canopy layer is going to be planted. You've got that kind of idea, and then you start on the second part. Is you start to actually put it together, and you plant your windbreaks, and you put up your dead hedges, and you create your perennial veg area, put in your structures, and you're planting your trees, your canopy layer. And at that stage, really what you've got is the kind of bones of the garden. It's the framework for the garden. The third stage, the cultivate stage, is about taking that further. So you kind of, if you think about it in terms of you're altering the balance of the garden. So like, for example, here, this is rough pasture, kind of untreated pasture land. And a fair few people will have this. And then it's like turning a field of grass and turning it into a forest garden. And you want to shift the equilibrium from a field of grass, which has to be mown every year, to shifting the equilibrium to a edge of woodland. So it's like it becomes a forest garden. So you're changing the nature of the garden. So with the structure in place, you'll then have dead hedges, windbreaks planted, and then you'll have a perennial veg area and your structures in. But then each of the areas will just be like a grass, which you have to cut once a year, with trees in. Yeah. So when it comes to the cultivate set part of this, we're going to prepare that ground. So in this example, if you've got grass, you're going to be getting rid of the grass, planting shrubs and planting ground cover, and then you do that area by area. So this is the third part. So remember, for the overall thing, what you're doing is plan, structure, cultivate. Those 3 kind of stages to get the ball rolling. Oops, so I've got some notes here. And I think it's really important with the role of paths. It's kind of fascinating, the design process, but the paths are great. And if you are starting with grass, what you can do is actually say, okay, what bit do I, where's the entrance into the land, and where's the exit, and what parts do I need, and where's the watering, and where's the propagation area, and where are the fruit trees, and keeping the perennial veg near the kitchen, all this kind of thing. But it's all defined by the use of paths. So paths are for walking, but they're also defining as well. And paths define the areas in a garden, so they're vitally important. And a very good tip is, if you're starting out with an area of grass, a lawn or a field, use a mower and then mow the paths and see if they work. See if that's actually how you want to walk and where you want to walk to. So don't commit to paths straight away. Like an awful lot of things, a lot of these things you don't have to commit to them straight away. You can wait and see what arises from a situation. And what I would say is, grass paths are really grass is great. Grass is a fantastic, hard-wearing, quick-growing, dominates an area. It's a fantastic ground cover, and it's a good ground cover for a large expanse of path, but it's a pain in the butt because it just its advantages is also its disadvantages. It grows everywhere. So here, I'll just zoom in. This is down by the compost bay just outside. The grass just grows. As you can see, it grows over the sheet mulch, it grows over into this bed. So what I've actually done is I've taken up the sheet mulch and I have actually planted creeping buttercup, Ranunculus repens, and that's to keep the grass out. Yep. So, and the same on here. I've also planted which one is it? It's a geranium, Roxanne. Oh, I can't remember which one. Blue one. Big chunky roots, and it forms a kind of big clumping geranium, and it just keeps the grass back, and you can mow underneath it. So that will grow eventually over the next couple of years. That will grow down here, so there'll be a border on either side of yellow buttercup on one side and brilliant blue geraniums on the other, and I'll just kind of mow underneath it, and they're just to keep the grass in check. So grass is really, really good for paths. But it's the kind of bigger areas where it's good for. As I said in the last seminar, lecture, whatever, I'd like to use wood chip paths for kind of smaller areas, and then what you can do with the wood chip path, so around my veg beds, you can actually weed the wood chip paths because you'll get more stuff growing through it, because it's not as it's kind of, there'll be more stuff coming up. You can use a hoe and actually weed your paths as well, and then you top it up once a year. You top up the wood chip paths too. And if it's a very high, depending on the size of the garden, that's for a larger garden. If it's a smaller area, you might be better off putting in a hard surface, so like a hard path, which I won't go into about how to create a hard path. There's lots of information out there how to do it, but that might be better if you have a smaller space, because there'll be a lot more foot traffic. So the key thing is cultivate area by area. So you've got your plan, you've done you created your design, you've done the survey, you've done the design. Excuse me. Then you've done the structural parts of it. And the final bit is you want to cultivate this process that we're going through now, preparing the ground and putting the shrubs and ground cover in. Cultivate area by area. So I'm using Dan's example here. It's a map for a design for Dan's house. Dan is on the Forest Garden group, and I've kind of had it was good fun naming different areas and putting in, saying, oh, we could put a path here and a path there. And it's actually good. It's actually quite nice fun. It's good, and it's mostly a big grass field at this on this side, and there's some existing structures down here. They want to put a polytunnel down here, so I've called it things like there's old veg, picnic places like where there's a picnic table, datum because there's date plum there. Because that's a Tai Chi area, grass circle for doing Tai Chi. Pine zone because there's stone pines up there. So you can have, and the names can change, but then it really helps to define the different areas and give them names and say, right, for example, I am working on the veg area, boring old name. I'm working on the veg area, and then I want to be working, there's a herb garden, which I'm totally revamping, that won't be till next year. And there's a woodland garden, which hopefully I'll get started on this autumn. So, and I've got the children's den at the top, which has been a work in progress for the past 2 years. So I'm going to work on them section by section, and then complete them, like do the set up the ground cover, make it all kind of low maintenance as possible. And once that's done, you can just do a bit of weeding, but it's concentrating on area by area. And what I would say as well is concentrate on the areas that you're going to use closest to the house. So for Dan's example, you don't really need to see that. You can see the house here, and then no. Sorry. Yeah. All right, let's zoom in down here. So you got a polytunnel down the bottom, and there's a picnic place. So I'd kind of say, and then the back of the house or the patio. So I'd say concentrate on these 3 areas. Put the trees in the structural part of it. Keep the grass down, but then section by section, work on each of those areas. Cultivate each of those areas until it's done, and then move on to the next area. The advantage of this is that I tried to do everything all at the same time, and it was a bloody nightmare. It really, really was a nightmare. You're best off, because then it's like everything's not properly finished, and then I've got to go back and I've got to replant a lot of ground cover, and I might even have to kind of clear a whole area of ground that was cleared once before. So do take the time to do it properly, area by area, and get rid of grass. I mean, don't have any grass anywhere apart from paths, and then line the paths with the ground cover, so that it's strong. Make sure you got like the grass is maintained, and keep the grass as small as you can. Not so small that you get covered in water when it rains and everything flops on top of you, but small, not so big that you spend your entire time mowing grass paths. So yes, a balance is all about a balance in a forest garden. So what we're going to do then is move on to ground preparation. In the olden days, when I first moved here, excuse me, I was a big proponent of woven plastic sheet mulch, and putting that down, and it does work. You put it down in the summer is the best time. Best time to do it in terms of timings is put the sheet mulch down in the summer. There's less water around. The grass heats up and dies back if it's grass that you're killing off. Well, to be fair, most plants. And it can take just a few weeks to kill off the grass, and maybe a bit longer to kill off things like dandelions and plantain, if you want to kill them off, that is. But now I really have a problem with plastic, because what's happened is, because I've tried to do everything at the same time, there's still plastic down from a couple of years ago, and the grass just grows over the top of it, and I've ended up with plastic that is of no use, and that will be and ultimately gets put into landfill anyway and never decomposes. And yeah, I think no more plastic. This is the vow that I've made about a year ago. No more plastic. I'm going to use kind of physical methods, or compost or cardboard. So for small areas, so for example, the perennial vegetable area that I'm using at the moment, that I have at the back, I am using a manual deturfing. So I've got what's called a turfing iron, or you can use a sharpened spade, but a turfing iron, it's hard work, but it's doable. But it's like a small area. It's kind of not worth the aggravation getting into. Not worth the aggravation of getting into machinery in or anything. So yeah, deturf manually. For a slightly larger area, cardboard, you can get cardboard from bicycle shops. Bicycle shops have big old cardboard boxes that bicycles come in, and then layer it up, at least two layers thick, weigh it down with stuff, like you can see in the photograph here. Weigh it down with stuff, and then then you can either put compost on top of it and then plant into that, or topsoil, or you can take the cardboard up. So it depends how long you leave it there for, and how much, if you have any compost, or depends on the situation. So you can either compost on top, plant into it, or take up the cardboard, use it elsewhere, depending upon how wet and what kind of state it's in. I did actually miss off, if you do have a lawn, I missed off here, you can use a deturfing machine, which is if it's a nice flat lawn that you want to take up, you can actually use a deturfing machine, which will run along and it will cut the turf underneath, and then you can roll it and move it. So that might be easier if you have a lawn. I will add that. I will add that to the notes now. There we go. Just adding it to the notes. Add deturfing machine. And finally, what I am going to do here is I'm going to use a mini digger to scrape the grass off. The advantage is it can be done in one day. Like there's about an acre. Well, it's an acre field, so it's probably a third of an acre, the area of the grass that needs to be cut. So before you do it, you need to cut the grass short. I really haven't bothered cutting the grass at all. I've been taking out docks and bramble, and then not really cutting it. But you need to cut it short so it's easier to scrape. But so that's the advantage of it, and it can do it in one day, and it costs about 150 quid. The disadvantage is, firstly, it removes nutrients. So you can see in this photograph here, you're taking off the top layer of nutrients, so you're actually moving them. What I will be doing with all these piles of earth is to make kind of earth mounds, which will be additional windbreaks, and then plant shrubs along the top of the earth mounds, and it'll be like a feature and a windbreak as well. The other disadvantage is that you have to have all your ground cover plants ready to go, ready to be propagated, ready to go in. So you need to propagate your ground cover plants. If you consider that, I'll come on to this in a minute, but that you need about 3 to 5 ground cover plants per square metre, you're doing a third of an acre, or I don't know how many square metres that is, you're going to not want thousands of ground cover plants, which is a lot of plants to get ready. There are other ways of doing it. You can buy them in, depending upon the ground cover that you're using. You might well be able to get plug plants. I managed to get them from British Wildflowers, and they were British Wildflower plug plants were something like, they worked out in bulk. They were something like 65 pence per plug plant, so £1.80 per square metre for plug plants. So that might be an alternative option, depending upon what's available and where you can get hold of it from. But by far the cheapest thing to do is to propagate them yourself, but it is quite a lot of work. So I've got to make. I want to do a fair bit of. I'm going to be doing this in certain areas. I'm going to be putting in the ground cover in the other forest garden, and I've got like 200 square meters, so I need a few. A few hundred plants, a few hundred kind of ground cover plants to put in there, 600 or so. Okay, so yes, that's my preferred method for larger areas, is using a mini digger. And then you've got the ground scraped. What do you do next? Shrubs. So what we do, this is my kind of preferred way of doing stuff. Make that bigger. Hold on a second. WFB. Make planting photo bigger. You can't really see that. It's a bit rubbish. So this area here has been deturfed. I use sheet mulch, but in the future, as I said, I'll be using a mini digger. The grass has died back, and then I put bark mulch down. Bark mulch is my preferred mulch for doing an area, because it decomposes. In my experience, it decomposes slower than wood chip. Wood chip's easier to get hold of, so I can use wood chip for piles and it binds together better, whereas bark kind of dries out and decomposes slower, so it provides better coverage for longer to allow the ground cover plants, perennial ground cover plants, to get established. So the order is you put in, the order is that you put in the bark, plant the shrubs. You can see they're marked out. Always, when you're doing any planting at all, mark out your measurements. Don't go solely by the design that you've done. Always measure in situ. And here I've put like a lovely, they're chalk circles with a bit of string and bamboo, so you can figure out the spacing make sure you get the right spacing between the shrubs and between the plants, and you plant the shrubs in there. So you can just about see there's like a bamboo where I put the shrubs in. Then you put in your perennial ground cover, and that's about 3 to 5 plants per square meter, depending upon how many plants you've got, how much money you've got, what the ground cover is, how quickly the ground cover grows. Evergreen ground cover generally grows slower than deciduous ground cover. So like we've got some periwinkle, which is lovely, lesser periwinkle, really good ground cover. It forms a thick mat, so you don't want it everywhere, but it has taken 3 years to get established, 3 or 4 years to get established to get to that point. But you put a temporary ground cover in as well, and the temporary ground cover is what I use is white mustard seed. Is a very good temporary ground cover. You can buy it in bulk cheaply for you can buy it, it's like 50 odd quid for a sack of it, which will be enough for an acre, and then you just sprinkle it liberally on top of the bark, and it grows up for the first year. And this then kind of provides a bit of cover for the perennial ground cover that you planted that allows that to get established. What is interesting about the ground cover, and there's lots of discussions in the Forest Garden group, which is brilliant, is that you can use other ground covers as well. So, for example, Dan on the Forest Garden group was talking about using forget-me-not. Funnily enough, forget-me-not, and it's an annual, self-seeds freely, and a member of the borage family, and it's a really, really good temporary ground cover until other plants get established. So that's a very good example. I've used foxgloves. They're self-seed profusely on disturbed ground. They generally like part shade, but they will grow in full sun as well, depending on the situation. Damper soils, I think, more kind of woodland plant. But having said that, you get them growing on beaches, so who knows? And they've got big leaves that cover the ground, and they will allow other kind of perennial ground cover to get established. So we use that with periwinkles by accident, but they've worked really, really well. And there's a whole load of other annual wildflowers that you can use. Do think about what I've started doing is to plant annual wildflowers about the place, and if they come up and they self-seed, fantastic, and if they don't, well, it's no big shakes. I can use something else instead. But it's just, you can experiment with different temporary ground covers. So yeah, that's the kind of the process. Mulch, shrubs, plant your ground cover, and then put a temporary ground cover over the top. Oops, there we go. So with the shrubs, I thought I put in the thing here. Oh, I did, but I didn't renew the page. Hold on a second. Oh, is that going to work? How exciting. Yes, there we go. Yep, there we go. Right, so shrubs, sorry. I just added a bit which didn't show up. Shrubs. So the shrubs, there are thousands of different shrubs that you can use, and it really depends upon the harvest that you want and where you are in the world and all the rest of it. So I've kind of very simply divided it into 3 different types of shrubs that you want. They're soft fruit, so there's a whole load of them: aronia berries, black currants, gooseberries, jostaberries, chuckleberries, quince, Japanese quince, Chinese quince, mahonia. There will be loads that I've Japanese wineberry, thornless blackberry, whole loads and loads of them, sea buckthorn. So soft fruit is a lot of shrubs will provide you with soft fruit, and windbreak as well. So you generally use shrubs as a windbreak, and the difference between a shrub and a tree is that a tree has a single stem and is generally bigger, and a shrub generally has multiple stems and is kind of smaller, but isn't a herbaceous perennial is one that dies back in the winter, whereas a shrub maintains its structure, has a woody element to it. It's all a bit vague and woolly sort of definition, but that's the idea behind it. So a lot of the windbreaks that you're planting, so for example here, Scotch broom, I've got cornus, red dogwood, yellow dogwood, Gelder rose, sea buckthorn, autumn olive. They're all like the windbreak plants. And then you get nitrogen fixing plants, shrubs, shrubs that provide nitrogen for the garden as a whole. So sea buckthorn, autumn olive, Scotch broom, green alder, which you can kind of treat as a shrub. So those are the three kind of types of shrubs that you got. And there are some shrubs that will do all three. So autumn olive is one example. It provides you with fruit, it's a windbreak, and it's also nitrogen fixing. Do use name varieties if you want to get a lot of fruit. And then another one is sea buckthorn. So it's a UK native, and it has soft fruit, it's a windbreak, and it's nitrogen fixing. Use them in the right situation. Again, I always propose using native plants where possible, depending upon where you are in the world, obviously. So I like to use for windbreaks because it's like a big bulk, and you generally buy bare root, unnamed. You don't get named varieties generally for a windbreak unless you propagate your own, because it'd be too expensive. So you have bare root, unnamed species of the windbreak, and it provides a lot of bulk. I generally use UK native plants UK native shrubs in that situation. But for any kind of an idea of what species to use, start off with Martin Crawford's written a couple of books. He's got a book called Shrubs, Martin Crawford Shrubs, and you'll be able to get a whole load of shrubs in there. And then there's a whole load in here as well. So this is the kind of book that I recommend that you get. It has a whole load of shrubs in here too, so do have a look in here. I have created a forest garden spreadsheet along with a couple of people, Ollie Boone and Chris Day, and forest garden spreadsheet. It has all the plants listed in Martin Crawford's book is on a spreadsheet, so you can go through them and see the different characteristics and sizes and conditions that they like and all the rest of it. Okay, so yes, for more plants, look there. And then onto ground cover. So coming back to this idea, the timing is really, really important. One area at a time. So you can't. This is actually the woodland area in my propagation. My previous propagation area, I've upgraded the propagation area, so now we've got pallets on bricks, and I moved it down next to the water, closer to the entrance to the garden, so it's a much better space, much better place to be. But concentrate on one area at a time. So as before I said with the plan of Dan's garden, look at one area, name the areas, work out what's going to go on with each area, and then put the structure in for the whole garden, and then area by area, prepare the ground and put the plants in. Yeah, so remember you need 3 to 5 ground cover plants per square metre. So for an area of 100 square meters, which is only 10 meters by 10 meters, that's 400 plants. So that's a lot of plants for not that much area. So you might be better off going down the plug plant route. You might be better off or propagating or doing both. So see where you're at, but do the work out in advance how many plants you will need before. Don't be in a situation like I've been in where I've gone and done all the ground preparation, got a whole lot of ground. I didn't have enough ground cover plants, and it was like, that was a bit stupid, wasn't it? So propagate. Propagation is much easier. Propagation is much cheaper. Generally, it depends upon your time as well. If you can buy plug plants for the plants that you want, then that's kind of a good start. But aim for easy plants. There's quite a lot of snobbery in horticultural circles about, oh, look at me, I've got a very difficult plant and I have propagated it, aren't I clever? I remember it was on Gardener's World and they had the Himalayan poppy, the Mechanopsis, and it was like, what a lot of bother spraying it 4 times a day with a little water spray. Oh, none of that bollocks. Actually, just go for easy plants. Easy plants is good. Native plants as well, because native plants are better for wildlife because it provides a food source for insects, and insects are foundational part of the food web. And ground cover plants, because you really don't worry so much. I mean, I've got shrubs here, red dogwood, but don't worry so much about shrubs. Well, it depends upon how many you need for a windbreak, but ground cover plants really is the kind of thing that you want to be propagating, because you will need so many of them. And then once you have the area set up, so you've scraped or cardboard mulched or whatever it is that you've done to clear the area, you put a bark mulch down, you've marked out where the plants are going, you've planted your shrubs, then you put in your ground cover plants, and then you've put your temporary ground cover on top. What you need to do then is just to kind of weed it until the ground cover gets established. And this is the kind of not a critical thing, but the earlier you weed, then the less work it is. So do keep on top. And the key ones that I'm always kind of weeding out, the grass. Firstly, grass gets everywhere, so just pull out grass whenever you see it, if it's on a bed. Bramble and dock, because dock self-seeds. When a garden's getting established, dock self-seeds, and it kind of can take over an area. It's not a bad plant, but it can just like take over. When you dig out dock, you need to dig out the tap root, and then what I do is put the dock onto a dead hedge, which is like a temporary structure made out of old branches to provide wind protection. And it's a great place also for drying out dock roots, so that you don't put them in a compost heap, because they'll just keep on growing. And then there's scissor weeding, depending upon where you are. To be honest, most of the time I don't bother with a lot of weeding. Depends what there is there, but like plantain, for example, I generally let plantain go, and dandelions, I don't see what the point is of weeding them unless they're actually restricting the growth of a plant that I want. I generally just leave them and let them get on and do their thing. If you really need to kind of get rid of them, and if then there's no need to pull them up. What you can do is you can use a pair of scissors, and you can just chop the top part of the plant off. They will grow back. They'll grow back weakened, and you just keep on doing it, and then it just keeps nutrients in the soil as well. And you can just drop the weeding stuff on the ground. Don't drop grass or bramble or dock on the ground, in case it kind of reestablishes itself. But other stuff is fine if you're doing scissor weeding. And then chop and drop mulch is where you grow a comfrey plant next to a fruit tree, and then you kind of chop it and then drop it in situ. And you do that once or twice a year. This time of year, the comfrey is getting quite leggy, so you can just I will be doing it shortly. And then it's also at this time of year, the fruit is starting to set, and that's when the fruit tree needs more potassium. So every fruit tree, pretty much every tree actually, I've planted comfrey by every tree. Okay, there we go. Hope that's useful. I will be condensing this into a 2-part evening course, and take it from there. So remember, plan, structure, cultivate. 3 different stages of creating a forest garden. There we go. Hope that's what are you doing? I hope that's useful. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall hop over to the Zoom meeting now. Thank you. Bye.